Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about ambient and ambient pad and drone, which can be very useful if you're making more like deep techno, or obviously dub techno, ambient techno. Now when I started making music, I thought it was just kind of made out of any sound source and you just throw it into a lot of delay and reverb, which is to a certain extent quite true, but there is obviously way much more going into. So first I'm gonna talk a little bit about chord and how you can design a chord for this kind of ambient sound. Then we're gonna see how to create evolving synth patch, and then finally I will show you some effect that will add a lot of variation and modulation to your original sound so it doesn't sound too boring. Now, like usual with music production, there is no one way of doing things. I always recommend you to experiment. I will try to show you as much things as I can and way you can go different than what I'm gonna go today. But yeah, let's jump into it. Now, before to start, I realize this video will take longer than usual, so here are two quick methods to get this kind of ambient pad if you are in a hurry. First, take a kind of noisy loop. Usually I will use that to add a bit of noise to my track. And then if you go to Ableton Audio Effect and you go to the Resonator, you have one preset called Berlin, and you can see it's kind of doing a minor chord here with the Resonator, and you get instant. Kind of a nice steady ambient pad. If you wonder about the effect chain, it's the same that we're gonna cover today, so just go to the effects section. The second super fast way is basically to use granular synthesis, so you can use Granulator 3 and just like throw any kind of drone or pad things and it's gonna just instantly So obviously you can play way much more around with Granulator, but I will just need another video for that. But that's a great way as well to quickly create this kind of nice drone background ambience. Now when it comes to ambient pad, I'm thinking about three kind of different ambient pads. It will be the first one, which is more like in the background, like just a single chord in the background, like it will kind of set the mood, support the track. Then you will have same kind of pad, pretty steady, with like a single chord, but then some subtle variation harmonically going along, kind of almost doing like a chord progression. I'm gonna show you this later. And finally, I would say like the classic pad with a chord progression. Alright, so first we're gonna create the evolving synth sound. So we're gonna use Ableton wavetable, but all the tips I will say can apply to any synth basically. Now I'm gonna use the vintage wavetable and we're gonna set on classic mode because we're gonna modulate the pulse width later. And for oscillator 2, vintage as well. And we're gonna use the OB6 shape and we're gonna go grab the sawtooth. Now I'll choose this kind of waveform because this kind of vintage is kind of gonna get a warmer sound. Now that can be interesting to maybe use other more modern wavetable. We're gonna see this later as well, like the complex, the distortion, the filter, the formant. Or you can use also FM to kind of get this metallic tone if you want a more cold ambience. So here again the pitch width we can maybe, let me actually. The idea is to obviously modulate this pitch width, it's gonna add movement, but before that I'm gonna slightly detune oscillator 2. Alright, so we're gonna go to matrix, we're gonna click on plus width here, and we're gonna modulate with LFO1, this one, and I'm gonna click here. It's just really to add movement. Then we go to LFO1. I usually use the triangle, and then about the rate is really what you want. You can go for something very slow if you want something evolving over time. Here, I'm gonna do a bit different. Maybe a bit faster, but a bit less amount. You really want that subtle movement. Now, another common thing is to modulate pitch, so like kind of you can do vibrato, or you can do like this kind of tape effect, like this kind of slow pitch modulation. You can do to the overall synth if you modulate the pitch, but you can also just decide to modulate one oscillator to again accentuate this kind of drifting pitch effect. So here we're gonna modulate just oscillator to pitch, and we're gonna use LFO2. So here you have to be like very gentle, like just a little bit. So if you see here it's too much, but we can obviously reduce the amount. And again, you can go for something very slow, almost like a vibrato here, in between maybe. Now another way to add a detune or like this drifting phasing effect is to use unison. So I'm gonna use the classic, but you can obviously experiment with the shimmer, the noise, and all of the other. Here I usually don't go too crazy, it really depends what you want, but because when you play a chord, for example, here F minor, it's become too obvious for me. I like to keep it a bit more subtle, so like that's good. Without, with. Okay, maybe we can reduce the volume. Now we can add an extra oscillator with the sub. Now, one thing we haven't talked yet is obviously the filter, which is gonna be very important. You don't really want this buzzy. You wanna soften a little bit. So then again, 24 dB, 12 dB, it's up to you. Again, you can use a drive and in conjunction with the resonance. And with different filter, you will have kind of different sweeping. I'm gonna keep the kind of Moog Prodigy style. Another thing that can be interesting is to use the second filter as a high pass filter to kind of cut. This can be something you can modulate later, or just to add character. I'm gonna leave it like this now. Now, one important thing is obviously we need to shape the sound, because now it doesn't really sound like a pad. So usually you have a long attack. This again, here I'm gonna put 1 second, but because I don't want something too long to come. Usually I like to put a long release as well, so like this, when you change, if you do a chord progression, kind of smoothen the transition a little bit. And we can bring up maybe the sustainer. Now what we can do obviously is to modulate our filter with this envelope. So here again, you can go a little bit crazy. And here you could, for example, put a longer decay, so. Or even like a longer attack and longer release. But we're gonna keep how it was. I just want a little bit of modulation. I don't want to be too obvious. All right, that's cool, but I feel it's missing a bit of grit. So you can use effect, but you can use as well the envelope 3. We're gonna use it in loop mode, and the idea is to have no sustain, no release, and to kind of having a very fast LFO. So I'm gonna put it on the filter. You're gonna hear how it sounds. See, it's kind of acting as a LFO, but if you start to get like some interesting noisy texture, you can play with the attack. Maybe we can reduce the value and maybe as well the amount here. See it? Just add a bit of dirt. I just want to be subtle. We can actually do that on the pitch as well. You see, having this kind of FM drift sound. So here again, a bit more subtle. Now that's where usually I start to have fun and I start to modulate a little bit everything with everything. So for example, LFO1 can modulate a little bit the filter as well. One thing I like to do is as well modulating the pan of each oscillator. It's gonna create this kind of stereo effect. Oscillator 1, let's say -30. And oscillator 2. You can play with time. This is to kind of get this kind of drifting effect. You can even modulate this time with LFO2. You can modulate the unison amount. Now we could even use envelope 2 to modulate the high pass filter here, but we're gonna stay like this. I'm just gonna bring down this. Now obviously you can add LFO or shaper to even accentuate if you wanna, for example, modulate slowly your filter. You can do that. Alright, now before to add more effect, I'm gonna add the reverb because I feel like it's gonna allow you to hear better the effect that we're gonna add later. So I just use the default Ableton and I'm just gonna crank up maybe the reverb, the GK, more like 16 seconds. Okay. So like this we have something a bit more, yeah, like that. Now one cool thing you can do is you can use Resonator and select the root note like here. I'm gonna put myself F, and then you can start to put. So the idea is to don't put like minor or major, like trying to put interval that you know that. And actually here the idea is to use the LFO and to map the gain. So basically the idea is to have like, because basically here we have different resonant frequency that's gonna be generated by Resonator, and the idea is to have them, some of them coming back and forward. Yeah, then you can like obviously set that in the way that they are not all the same. So I'm just gonna put random value here, but we need obviously to kind of slow down the rate and maybe the depth as well. And yeah, so this way we have like kind of evolving tones. So this needs a little bit more tweaking, but I wanted to show you obviously like maybe use different LFO with different speed and to having them going up and down, but you get the idea of this kind of. You see I'm just playing one note. So then when you So that's a quick one I wanted to show you. In terms of pitch shifting as well, I like to use sometimes shifter, and you're gonna put, let's say, 7 semitones. So like this, you sure you don't get out of the scale. Let me remove the resonator, like this you hear better. And maybe again you can use the LFO to modulate this. So this, from time to time, you will have like this. Coming and then down. You can use an octave. Again, you can really experiment, but yeah. And then like slow down now. So here again, a way to experiment, maybe you can group into a rack having different pitch with different LFO. Again, it's similar to the Resonator, but yeah, it's another technique I wanted to show you. Now you can use obviously classic effect like chorus. So this obviously the more you put, the more you will have this detune effect. Here I like to use it just to add a bit of stereo maybe. You can use slower rate if you want. More like kind of wobbly. Again, the thing with this effect, you can really play with the rate to have different movement. You know, you can have like fast vibrato type of effect. You can have like slow rate. The idea is to always use them in the subtle way, and obviously what's interesting is different rate will never be like kind of synchronized, so it's kind of always evolving, morphing kind of sync. Now another classic effect is a phaser. Again, you can adjust the... But obviously you can use it more like as a flanger as well. Now, one thing I haven't shown you, but you can modulate obviously the dry wet with the LFO, so sometimes you have the phaser, sometimes no. And now we can put back our effect together. You could add also some delay. You could use, for example, echo, which is really great because you can kind of filter your delay. You have a bit of reverb you can add as well. And you can modulate also all of that with very slow modulation, the filter. You can also add some wobble and noise if you want some extra character. Again, all of that can be modulated with LFO. Just gonna remove the noise for now. And yeah, now we have our sound. It's all about what like chord to play, because I was kind of playing random things, but yeah, what note do I play? So like I said at the beginning of the video, there is, I would say, 3 different chords. You will have like the one steady in the background. You will have like one which is also kind of very steady, but with some subtle harmonic variation. And you will have like more like kind of a classic chord progression with like with some kind of big chord change. So let's go. We're gonna use here, we're gonna take maybe F as the root note. So here's F0. You can maybe put it up. I'm gonna just put maybe 4 bar. Okay, once we have, so the first thing that would come to mind is maybe, okay, let's do a minor, so chord, so up, like so here plus 3 semitone and then plus 7. So for this case of like kind of having the monochord like more in the background, I feel like it's better to avoid to use maybe the minor or the major, because then if you have some extra harmonic variation later on along the track, it's gonna kind of sound off. Why not instead just like having plus 2 semitone, but instead of staying here? Another thing that is very important and I didn't know at the beginning is that it's great to kind of spread your chord. So what I mean by that is like kind of doing inversions. I mean, this one, I put it 1 octave upper. And we have already something cool, so now you can add extra harmonics. So now it's really up to you. You have to try, depending of the mood, you can try to add one note. So then it really depends. What move you want to give. Again, you can try to spread over different octaves. This is something I really recommend. So that's the first type of chord you will have, like this kind of really in the background, and then for example you will have like a dub on top, but this will work already pretty well, let's say in the track. Now the other type of chord, basically you can take the same chord, but then you decide to make some evolve in the progression. So for example, let's say this G2, maybe you put it, let's say 2 semitone down. And so basically like this, you kind of have, you could actually leave this chord long like this, and you kind of do you kind of chord progression melody, but inside the chord. I mean, it doesn't need to be inside, but you get what I mean. Because then obviously this you could like put it more like in the top, and then you will have. Maybe here. So then after obviously it depends what you are looking for, but yeah, I really wanted to emphasize this idea of spreading your chord over different octave, and then maybe having just like the same chord but then one note of the chord which is like kind of go doing the melody or the harmony. Now obviously the last one is the kind of classic chord progression, so don't really have any special tips against the one I already said, like to space out things. But then yeah, just use like kind of a classic chord progression and then spread the chord. And then obviously, yeah, you just need to find a good chord progression. But yeah, it's worked as well pretty well. Can maybe play it 1 octave down. Now another thing you can do, but that can be tricky because it can lead you into an endless loop, is basically you have your pad and you have you like a mono chord, like with no variation in terms of notes and harmony. And then you kind of duplicate your track and you kind of try to do this harmony variation with another scent. So you can either duplicate or having another extra scent. Now in terms of MIDI, if you don't really know what to play and how to space your chord, what I've done is you have this chord device in Ableton where you can like just set chords that you want. Like you just press one note and it will create the chord you want. And what I've done is I have plenty of different presets that I know it works, and I will make it available for my Patreon. But basically you can replicate basically like this. You see, like if you don't understand how to recreate, basically the -17 is the -17 here, +4 +18 -5 -8 is the number here. So you can basically recreate this one at home as well. And with just one note you get a rich sound. And then what you can do is copy paste this in the MIDI clip to then make it evolve. Like for example, you can start at 0, like if it was C, and then having one at -8. So when I say -8, it's -8 semitones. So you go from your root and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have this one here. And then same with +4. You start from the root and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can create the chord like this following the core device. All right, and that's it. So this preset will be available for free. I put the link in the description. If you want to grab it, don't forget to like and subscribe before to grab it. Now, if you want the MIDI chord preset and the project file, this is for my Patreon. So if you want to also support me even more, you can subscribe to my Patreon. And yeah, thank you for watching and see you. Bye-bye.